ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and my fellow visionaries. Today I stand here to discuss a vision for a vibrant, interconnected, and a thriving film market. A vision that not only celebrates our diverse cultures, but also our stories, and addresses a pressing need, the increased desire for intra-African trade. In an era where globalization has reshaped industries, we must recognize that Africa has a reservoir for creativity and talent. Our filmmakers, writers, actors, artists possess a unique ability to tell stories that resonate across the borders of this continent and the globe. Yet despite the immense qualities that we have and the potential that we have, we still face significant challenges in building a robust film market. Why is this important? First and foremost, a flourishing film market can serve as a catalyst to economic growth. By investing in our film and television, we create jobs, not just in production, but in distribution, in marketing, and exhibition. Now, think about it. Every film generates employment opportunities for hundreds and thousands of individuals, from directors to actors to technicians to marketers. This ripple effect culminates into a profound industry. A strong film market can empower local economies and uplift all communities. These can facilitate the expansion of SMEs into new export markets. Moreover, building a film market fosters cultural exchange and understanding. Intra-African trade is not merely about goods. It is about sharing our narratives. When we produce films that reflect our realities, when we invite dialogues and connections, we are building a market. We break down barriers. We support the development of youth. We support the development of women. We support the development of enterprises across Africa. Imagine a Nigerian film reaching audiences in Morocco or South Africa, or a Moroccan documentary reaching and captivating audiences in Kenya. This exchange enriches our collective identity and strengthens our unity as Africans. It has happened before, during the era of the DVD with Nollywood. It can happen again, but this time more sustainably. But how do we build a market? The answer lies in a strategic planning and collaboration, particularly with the private sector. We must advocate investment in infrastructure, such as modern studios and funding mechanisms that would support local filmmakers, enabling them to bring stories to audiences. These must be established without the constraints of financial limitations. We must get credit. We must get guarantees. We must get equity for export development of African films. We are 54 countries with 1 billion people and a huge economy. We are a market. We also need to streamline regulations that hinder this kind of creative industries. By creating favorable legal environment that encourages investment and protects intellectual property, we can attract both local and international players to our film market. This is not just about facilitating production. It is about creating a sustainable ecosystem where creativity can thrive. Just like any SME, film productions need structured mechanisms to focus on development of skills and capabilities for film production entities that scale up the productivity. Banks must offer technical assistance to support more open-minded assessment, product development, and risk management. And bankers need creativity. Let us not forget that education and training, this investment is crucial because it ensures us getting narratives by people who understand the cultural significance deeply. And the key word here is understanding cultural narratives deeply. As we gather here in CANEX Weekend in 2024 in Algiers, let us also take inspiration from the rich history of collaboration amongst African nations. This is Algeria of Ben Bella, in fact. The time has come for us to harness the spirit of unity and apply it to our film industry, fostering knowledge sharing, resource sharing, and resource pooling. Together, we can create and elevate a quality content produced across the continent for the benefit of all. Now, let me share an example of what it is possible when we come together. Consider the role of film, especially film festivals across Africa. These events that showcase local talent while attracting international attention are very important. These festivals are not just celebrations of art, they are platforms and for collaboration and networking. They create spaces where filmmakers can meet potential investors, distributors, and audiences. By supporting these initiatives, we nurture talent, we build communities, and we share moments for shared visions for storytelling. As we gather here at CANEX 2024 in Athens, in Algiers, I present to you also a challenge. A challenge that not just sees ourselves, but for broadcasters, streaming platforms, and all stakeholders in the creative industries. We must see our film festivals not just as events, but as vital partners in the journey to build a sustainable film industry and film market across Africa. Festivals are the lifeblood of our film industry. They are the starting blocks from which stories can launch into the world. But they cannot do this alone. They need our support. They need our partnership to truly thrive. I urge broadcasters, terrestrial streaming channels to step up and collaborate with these festivals to catalyze broader movement. Your presence and initiatives in this critical juncture can make all the difference. Just as sprinters require starting blocks to propel themselves forward, our filmmakers need the backing of established platforms to gain momentum. By partnering with festivals, you can ensure that our stories reach wider audiences, not just domestically, but also internationally, and also enhance your own profile of offerings. Together, we can make an environment where creativity knows no bounds, where cultural narratives are exchanged, and where intra-African trade flourishes through film. But let us also be clear. This is not just about financial investment. It's about belief and commitment to a shared vision. We need all the stakeholders, government, broadcasters, banks, investors, at this early stage who are willing to take risks and support bold ideas. Just as long-distance runners rely on their teammates to push them forward for faster speeds, our film industry needs champions. It needs individuals and organizations willing to propel us forward. Imagine the impact that we could have if we were collectively invested in building infrastructure for film production, for film exhibition across Africa. Picture a continent where stories from every corner of the continent can be told and celebrated on global platforms. A picture where the control of narratives of our own rich tapestry can be brought to the world. This is not just a dream. It is an achievable reality if we act now. By fostering partnerships between festivals and broadcasters, we can create an ecosystem that nurtures talent, encourages creativity, and drives economic growth. We can build a film market that not only showcases our rich cultural heritage, but also contributes significantly to the economic landscape of our continent. But let's also talk about film festivals that keep on sprouting up every morning. I challenge every country to reorganize their festivals, to unify their strengths. Sometimes, a regionally recognized market can be more impactful than a nationalist flag-waving one. By embracing regionalism, by embracing regional collaboration, we can rid ourselves of the political interference that often stifles creativity and innovation. Imagine a scenario where filmmakers from different countries come together under the banner of a regional festival, sharing resources, sharing knowledge, and sharing audiences. This approach not only enhances the quality of the films produced or the films screened, but it also enhances the solidarity among nations. And to celebrate a shared heritage while respecting our unique identities. We are trying it now in Rwanda for Eastern Africa. Togetherness is African. Just remember, Ubuntu. We must recognize that our strength lies in our diversity. By working together regionally, we can create a formidable film market that is resilient and dynamic. This is not simply an aspiration, it is a necessity if we are to unlock the full potential of Africa's creative industries. In conclusion, I urge you, filmmakers, broadcasters, investors, policymakers, and festival organizers to embrace this challenge. Let us build a collaborative ecosystem that nurtures talent, celebrates our stories, and propels our films market into the future. We can transform Africa's creative landscape and ensure our voices are heard loud and clear across the globe. Let us commit ourselves to this mission. Let us invest in the dream of a united African film market. Together we can unlock the potential of Africa's creative industries and pace forward for a brighter future. Now let us all remember the warning that Bob Marley gave us when he sang, "In the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. rat race. Remember that, and I thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Good afternoon to you all, and thank you for joining us for this session. Looking forward to unpacking some very important themes relating to the creative industry in Africa, specifically film and TV making. My panelists are very capable to unpack this topic. We're talking about financing, bringing more money into the space, film and TV. I'll start with you, George. And if you can just give us your perspective, because you run a fund, and tell us about your thoughts about how to access financing for film on the African continent. Yesterday, I was taking a look at the CANEX shorts. Really, really amazing productions. I think these stories need to be told, even if it's just for the educational and informative value of those stories. But I think many will be entertained as well. But then we have so many creatives that struggle to get access to financing. You obviously has been bringing a lot of financing to projects. Tell us more about the new ways to get this done.
Thank you. And thank you for hosting us here in a beautiful city of Algiers. It's my first time here, but I've also taken some time to watch local films and to speak to creators in this ecosystem. I think it's a critical time in our continent that films are not just recreational. They can be both commercial projects and also deeply artistic projects.
Sure.
We've seen in the last decade an increase in the quality, interest, both domestically in the continent and in the diaspora. In my experience, we have financed over 100 film projects from different perspectives. We've financed studios to acquire rights, especially for popular TV dramas like The Housewives of, and also to create merchandise and to create properties related to that intellectual property. We've also financed studios to acquire assets that they can continue to use in different productions. We've financed studios and producers to meet the gap between the finances they have from commissions as they wait to produce and recoup their money from distributors. So there are numerous models that are available for financing different types of film projects. But most important is that the filmmakers have to come from a place where they want to make their films commercial. And if you start from the commercial standpoint, then audience and distribution is a critical part of the puzzle.
Right.
And so once a filmmaker walks up to our office and they have thought about the production and the distribution and how to leverage both, then we are able to structure some sort of financing.
So what type of structures?
So I'll give you an example with a recent deal that we have just signed. I won't name the names or the off-takers, but a gentleman from South Africa walks up to us and tells us that they have these 3 scripts and they have done these 3 pilots. And they have these 3 possible off-takers, and some of them they've worked with before. And they want this amount of money. They are able to raise a little bit from themselves, a little equity from their friends, and a bit of pre-sales. So they have a gap. So then we have to discuss how they want that gap to be met. Some people want equity, some people want debt, some people want a mix of debt and equity. And so those are the kind of models and structures that we use to finance. But the most important part in a film deal, as far as I'm concerned, is the distribution part.
Right.
And so you have to have thought about your actors, your producers, vis-a-vis your market,
Right.
and who will take the film to the last mile.
So on the point about distribution, clearly the platforms that are available in Africa are not as developed as we have in the Western world.
Sure.
So the big question is, when many of these project promoters would come to you, for example, for financing,
Sure.
to what extent is should I say, the deal size important to you doing that transaction? Because at the end of the day, I get the sense that until we do see these platforms really evolve on the continents, we are going to see projects that commercially will be a much smaller scale than what you will find in most of the West.
So I financed all levels of films. I financed the $1 million film. I financed the middle level film, which is 300,000 to 500,000. And I financed the 5,000.
5,000.
5,000. We have different levels of investment.
So there's room for everybody.
There's room for everybody. But what is important for us is that the math has to make sense. At the 5,000 level, and I love the 5,000 level of film because that's where a lot of entry-level filmmakers are building their capacity, they're testing their audiences, and they're testing their capacity for last-mile distribution. I have seen a lot more innovation at the 5,000 level than at the $1 million level. I'll give you one example because of time.
Real quick.
In East Africa, there's a platform called Sahara. And this Sahara is a pay-per-view platform that the audience can pay $1, $2 to watch an episode or a full series. And most of the 5,000 level investments, 50,000 level investment, they make their money at opening night. And then they go on to produce in a guerrilla fashion new films. And eventually they become the 30,000. But the more sophisticated deals at the $1 million level, the proponents have to come with a plan. They have to tell us, we've spoken to Mnet, we've spoken to Canal Plus, we've spoken to XYZ, and we have had these kind of responses. And based on that, we can structure a fit-for-purpose deal.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
If I can go to Amadou and just following from that point you just shared about how you appeal to the global market, what elements from your experience do you think are important to really infuse into African filmmaking so that it can go further? Can you just share your perspective on that from your experience?
Gotcha. Well, thank you for having me on the panel. Honor to be here. When it comes to African stories, there's a few elements to hit. I will say, just for context, at the company that I work at, Macro, that was started by Charles King, we focus on amplifying stories that center diverse characters, as well as created by diverse people in our industry. So a lot of independent studios or companies don't focus on that, but we hyper-focus on that. And we know that we are the global majority when it comes to diverse audiences. When it comes to storytelling, there's a few different things to focus on. One thing that I'll focus on, and I'll be remiss to say it, is one, understanding the marketplace. The film and TV industry, just like the stock market, just like the housing market, any other market has ups and downs. I will say right now, the entertainment industry is going through a contraction. Now, the thing is that audiences are still consuming content, but the places, as far as the networks, the streamers, they are buying less, and the bar for the content has become higher. But we have now seen that places, for example, Netflix, half of their productions have been shot internationally for the first time in the company's history. So more people are looking for global stories. So one, understanding the marketplace, and there's trades as far as companies like Variety, Deadline, things of that nature that'll talk about the industry, understanding what the marketplace is looking for as the types of stories that appeal. I know right now, just as far as things that travel, things that are more so commercial, broad, as far as action appeal, thrillers, things of that nature, soapy dramas are really interesting. Right now that people are looking for. The next thing underneath that is to really focus on having an amazing script, an amazing pitch, I can't stress this enough, but the thing is the script is one of the most powerful things in our industry. A good story, well told, can get people to fall in love with it, but also that story comes to life. So when it comes to the craft of writing, really understanding story structure, how to have individuals fall in love with characters, sort of the beginning, middle, and climaxes. There's books on that, but I think the importance of working on scripts, reworking those, really making sure that they're tight as far as pitches and compelling for production companies or individuals like me to see them is really important. And I will say, lastly, just to put a button on it, strong characters are really important. Whether it's movies or TV shows, if you have a character that is compelling, that is going through some type of universal struggle or obstacle that they're trying to overcome, but you fall in love with, is really important. I think concepts get production companies and networks interested in it, but audiences, we fall in love with characters. And characters are central to any story, but if you have a great and compelling leads for a show, for a film, this is something that will resonate not only domestically but globally.
Right. But I'm just curious on that point about characters. Would you say, and it's interesting the statistic you pointed out in terms of the appeal of content on Netflix being now skewed towards international content versus, say, American content. But would you say there is a greater appeal for fiction as opposed to non-fiction stories? I just want to hear your perspective on that. Because the reason I bring that up is because there are so many stories, especially with African stories that have not been told, that are real stories.
Yeah. No, it varies. And I'll say this to say that there are definitely compelling fictional stories that need to be told, as well as nonfiction. The thing is that our current marketplace, a lot of times when you hear about stories based off of true events or real people, a lot of times they occur in the past and their period. And the first thing that a lot of networks or just companies hear when you hear a period piece is the budget goes up, because you have to make everything look like that time and period. So there is a desire for more contemporary stories. The thing is that if there are stories from certain countries, demographics that just have to be told, that everybody knows about. For example, we saw Mansa Musa, the musical, last night. That's something that everybody knows about, and that's something that could be told. Or is it Sunjata Keita? Things of that nature. There's ways of getting those stories out. But I will say, it's good to diversify the types of stories that you're telling. And I will say the marketplace right now is focusing more so on contemporary stories, whether that's fictional or non-fictional.
Thank you for that, Amaju. All right, let's go to Mukhtar. Mukhtar, let's talk about the importance of collaborating with the African diaspora to make these stories travel further. People like Amadu, for example, who is based in the United States, there's a sense that there's a huge opportunity for Africa to collaborate with the African diaspora. I want to hear your perspective on that point.
Well, thank you for having me. Very proud to be here. I think you got to look, for me, if you go back to your first question in regards to distribution, I think you got to look at kind of the connectivity of everything. Because I think sometimes we focus kind of a lot on globals.
Right.
I think sometimes focusing on where you're from and telling stories of where you're from and trying to focus on your own market essentially brings a global audience later. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes if you can kind of really look at what story you're trying to tell, can I connect to my audience on ground here? I think sometimes a mistake we make, or not a mistake we make, focusing too much on how can I make this global stops you from trying to tell the story you might want to tell. Do you know what I mean?
Understood.
And I think one thing about the diaspora and the focus on the diaspora is where I think the diaspora, especially in the UK, I've talked for the UK, there's a ceiling in the UK in terms of trying for Black and African creators. There's a ceiling in the UK in terms of there's not enough of us there. Do you know what I mean? For us to get our stories out there. So I think there is a way of collaborating with the African content in terms of looking at, okay, how can we tell stories that, for example, if you want to bring let's take Supercell, for example. Yeah? Supercell is a story that obviously about people with powers, etc., etc., etc. But the heart of it is a love story. Do you know what I mean? I think that love and stuff like that, love connects all the way. A good love story works. And it's about, and we put that love story within a genre piece. And I think in that way we're able to connect with a global audience. But the main thing about Supercell, we're trying to tell our story for ourselves. We're trying to tell a South London story. And that South London story connects globally. Do you know what I mean? So I go back to your point on diaspora and stuff like that. I think the most important thing is telling stories that connect with your local audience. We can essentially go global later.
Got it.
And I think if you try to work in a sense of, oh, let me try and tell a global story, you lose sight of the story, because what is a global story? There's no such thing as a global story. A story is a story. And I think your story needs to work for you and work with your audience first, and the people you're trying to tell the story to, which is usually a local story. And then, as Amadou said, hitting the right story points on structure, storytelling, characters, strong characters that resonate, characters that you can be personal with. I think those things translate later. But the most important thing is the script as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Boris,
Hey.
I think great to have you here. Mukhtar has just pointed out a very important point, that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that African stories are African stories. So we shouldn't try and make them global, in quotes. But there will be a global appeal to them if they are told well. But from your experience in Hollywood, what would you say are some of the lessons learned in terms of how the US industry works that could be adapted to strengthen the African content production space?
To piggyback on what Mukhtar just talked about, I think what we're looking for is personal stories, right? It's not local, it's not global, it's personal. And once it's personal, there's going to be a lot of people who can relate and who can identify with the story because it's personal. So in terms of Africa, what that means is bring your own authenticity, your own personality to the story. And that will travel worldwide. That's what the South Koreans did, that's what the Indians are doing. When you're talking about topics and subject matters that are immensely personal to you, it resonates with everybody because we're all human beings. And in terms of the U.S. Industry, what we can learn from the U.S. is numbers. And when we look at the numbers of African Americans versus, or the diaspora as a whole, which is the third biggest country in the world after China and India, and then we look at Africa as a whole and we look at the numbers, it's clear where the industry is going. So the only thing that's missing is the connectivity, which is coming at a speed that's 3 times faster than everywhere else in the world. When we're talking about digital connectivity, 5G, high-speed internet is where it's at, right? Because distribution is moving into a digital age where we're slowly moving away from theaters and we're going into streamers and we're going into mobile devices. We have 1.3 billion mobile devices in this continent.
Right.
And that's where the distribution will be. So what we learn is, especially from African-American filmmakers in the US, is that our audience is the most loyal audience there is. We can target and identify our demographic better than any other demographic in the world. We know exactly where our audience is. We can be more cost efficient in how we produce content in the States. That's why black movies have never lost money in the history of Hollywood, right? So, because when we produce movies under $10 million and we identify specific targets down to the zip code, we can be very intentional in how we target those demographics. And we can have the same impact here in Africa, and how to be intentional, how to target our audiences, and how to be cost efficient. I mean, he was talking about $5,000 movies, $50,000, $500, and $1 million movies. It's actually great that we have the ability here to produce in a very cost efficient way. That doesn't mean we're going to compromise on quality.
Right.
Because quality has a lot to do with technology, which is now an even playing field. So the challenge is to create our own narrative, because that narrative then impacts perception, which is the biggest challenge Africa has, right? So when we create those movies, it allows us to create our narrative, tell our stories, and counteract all those old stereotypes and one-dimensional thinking that we've been subjected to over the past 100 years.
Great point. Very well said. Thank you so much. Let me come back to George now. And he's hit on the point about distribution, which I think is really at heart of success. He talked about numbers. So in your view, given the fragmentation of the African market, so to speak, technology gives a huge opportunity. So maybe you can speak to how we can bring that market together. What's the best way to build, if you like, stronger, more integrated distribution networks on this continent?
I think that's the challenge of our decade.
It is.
Because in every conference that I've been, it's clear that we can analyze the problem from the same place. But the next thing is, how do we proceed into the future? And the future is tomorrow. I have a couple of ideas that I've been trying to experiment with. Some of the ideas include supporting intermediaries in numerous ways. And the other category is pushing governments to do what they need to do. And finally, building local technologies for distribution. So I'll speak only about these two because the governments, they're probably seated here and they have long speeches.
And hopefully they will listen if they're not here. Go ahead.
We need something between Netflix and myself at the continent. So my grandmother is not sophisticated enough to have a bank account, to have a card, a Visa card, to get a Netflix account. And Netflix has made it impossible to share the login for 10 people or 5 households and so on and so forth. So there's a gap for distribution of both content, digital content, and short films and small and local films in local dialects, whether they are religious content, whether it's musical content, whether it's children's content, because all the subcultures of film have paying audiences. And I have invested in a couple of these platforms, and we've seen from Viusasa to Shahara, Viusasa in Kenya has more subscribers than Netflix, and it has more than 30,000 producers, and it has more than 120,000 subscribers, bigger than Netflix.
So what does the government have to enable to make that platform
First, they need
more
to get out
usable?
of the way. They really have to get out of the way. But I don't want to talk about government. I also want to talk about this other group, which is the innovation. Film is an IP business.
Right.
And majority of the work has to go to the creation of the IP. And the IP is, you have to be crazy, you have to believe in a story, you have to try and find a way to tell that story in a way that's accessible to you without relying so much so in this American model that you have to be with a big studio, that you have to have spoken to HBO and so on and so forth. A small subsection of our producers will have that path, but a majority of us will produce, say, a drama series,
right,
and finance it through wedding photography and event photography and other kinds of audiovisual work,
yes,
within our local markets. So I think we need these middle distributors that are able to use local technologies to get the films and the film contents and the premieres and all this film culture at a local level.
right.
Before we imagine that we will make sense only when we take the Hollywood model.
I think it's an interesting point you're making. So if we think local enough, we can hopefully find models that will work to
Yes.
distribute this
Yes.
within that local environment.
But I still have resources for the sophisticated
Yes.
few.
So that would like take
at
it to the next level.
At the top of the pyramid, and they have to be Olympic swimmers. They have to be synchronized swimmers. That they have to have the best cast, the best equipment,
Right.
Great directors to have a magic magic point for global distribution, and that's going to be the minority within
Okay.
our larger ecosystem.
I don't think we've got any specifics in terms of how that model will work.
Sure.
But I want to open this up to other panelists. Thank you.
I'd love to jump in here real quick.
Sure, please.
I think some of the challenges we're talking about are based on the fact that we're producing in silos, right? There's always one filmmaker trying to get this money together to produce their film, and then hoping for distribution, and then waiting 3-4 years before they can afford to make the next movie. And that's a very arduous and very, very hard way to produce movies. And that's how these challenges keep showing up. I think we
What's
have
the
to look at
alternative?
this. We have to look at this from a perspective of scaling. And if you're able to pool money together and generate capital to invest in 5, 10, 15, 20 movies, now you can protect the individual authenticity and integrity of the filmmaker, while at the same time create leverage to go to the streamers and to negotiate from a place of power. Right? If I go to Netflix today with 10 movies, my deal looks different than if I go with one movie.
Right.
So as people of African descent, we have to learn how to partner. We have to learn how to create coalitions, to create synergies, to work together in order to create leverage. Unfortunately, because of history, the divide and conquer model has worked on us, whether it's colonization or slavery, and we're still subjected to those, to this negative legacy that's still with us. And for that reason, we think we have to be the crabs in a barrel. We have to fight for ourselves and hustle and grind. There's sitting somebody right next to me who has a network, who has capital, who has distribution. There's somebody else right here who has management, who has a representation model. We have to learn how to ask for help and how to pool our resources together and to work together. Because like you said earlier, $5,000, $50,000, or $1 million, that proposal is much more difficult if you look at it individually. But if we create a joint venture, we put a fund together, and we support filmmakers in various regions of Africa, and we pool those resources together, it's very expensive for one filmmaker to buy equipment. I get that.
Got it.
What if there's 20 filmmakers, and you're sharing the equipment, and you're paying for the equipment together? That's just a very simple example of how we can pool our resources together,
Right.
and make it work.
I think if I was to summarize the point you're making there, at least one point that I'm taking away is that small may sound nice, but small is not strong. So we really have to aggregate resources if we're going to really make a huge difference and be stronger at the negotiation table.
And we will not compromise authenticity at
Right.
all. And now we have AI. I invested in a company that has the ability to take your voice, your language, and translate it in your voice in 30 different languages with a perfect sync of your mouth. So you
Right.
cannot tell that you don't know the language. So in terms of Africa and 2,000 different dialects and languages, that's a barrier that doesn't exist anymore. So we can actually, in production, we can be very intentional about making sure that, what he said earlier, create content that's authentic and that's personal to us, but it still will travel outside because there's no more barriers of language.
That's what technology is enabling now. Really running out of time before I come to the audience to take a few questions. But go ahead, Musa.
I think one of the most important things, like I say, in distribution, I don't think we have the infrastructure in Africa in terms of the internet, 5G and stuff like that. I think trying to find ways that where there is more investment in the infrastructure, because I think the infrastructure will help distribution essentially. And I think, like for instance, here it's hard to kind of get internet in Algeria to communicate. Do you know what I mean? I think having that infrastructure and then finding ways, if it's government or whatever, banks or whatever, connecting with infrastructure people to create like the internet service, that's right. And there may be, I don't know, telephone companies working with government in terms of film offices.
Okay. Amadou, last point before I go to the audience.
Just to piggyback on that, my understanding is you need 3G or better to be able to stream.
Right.
And there's a lot of different countries that are working on that. I am aware, just as far as the big companies in the States, whether that's Disney, Netflix, or Amazon, depending on where you are, you've already seen them come and probably participate in certain film festivals or deals or whatnot. It is said that I think within this decade, 90% of sub-Saharan Africa will have 3G or better. And I know that that is happening fast. And the companies know this, and they know that this is a demographic that is going to open up. So you are going to see more people from the West here. The big thing for individuals like myself, or just creatives in general, artists, they create art and they work. And the one thing that is imperative is for it not necessarily to be a takeover, but more of a partnership. And working with artists, especially across the diaspora, whether it's in the States or in the UK, things like this, are really helpful. Whether it's collaborating on projects, figuring out how to work together, sharing that skill set is necessary. When I heard I was coming to Algeria, I said, "Oh my God, the Sahara Desert." And being here in Algiers, the weather is very reminiscent to business-minded folks. The return on investment, as far as being able to make it worthwhile financially for people to come to shoot these films in the different countries, is something that I've heard from a lot of producers as something that would definitely stem the tide, just as far as people coming and shooting it, whether it's Senegal to Kenya. So
Right.
just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. And I'm hoping we can touch the point about film festivals in a moment. But I'd like to open this up now to the audience. So if we do have anyone that would like to ask a question, or perhaps chime in and provide some commentary on some of the things we've pointed out. I see a hand over here. I also see a hand up front. So if we can just maybe start from the front. Please introduce yourself real quick and let us know who you're posing your question to, or if it's a comment, please make it very concise.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Esther Sami. I'm a filmmaker from Uganda. I would like to put it to any of the panelists. Can you comment on YouTube and the opportunities it presents for African filmmakers to be able to have their content known and distributed all around the world? Because right now I know, or I've noticed, a number of Nigerian actors and producers having entire YouTube channels, and they keep churning out content for free. And I believe this helps build appetite or demand for African films. So could you comment on the opportunities that YouTube presents? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come to that. Do we have any other questions, so we can just come back to the panelists with their answers?
Yeah, hi. My name is Thabo Mulubi. I'm from South Africa. I think what I'd like to say is I think that politicians need to come more to the party. You know, the country that I come from, we have seen our history. Nations are built, institutions are built over time. The film industry and the entertainment industry is the most neglected of all, even in our country. We've got so many stories to tell. People tell stories all the time, but you can't build any infrastructure in any sector without the involvement of government. Government cannot be excused. They've got to come to the party. If you've seen, I had a chat with you yesterday about, you know, the history of Hollywood, how it came about. And I think it's important to learn those lessons from history, that Hollywood didn't fall from the sky. There was a concerted effort by government to control money and support arts and culture. You know, artists are treated as people that need to go and act somewhere under a tree whilst we're busy.
Right.
You know, that shouldn't be the case. And I can't thank Afrexim enough, you know, for coming to the party with this platform here. Let me give others a chance. Thanks.
Thank you. One last question, if we have it. Real quick, please.
Hello, my name is Chama Ude, and I'm from Nigeria. With regards to what Mr. Boris said about the global stories, there are no global stories, there are only personal stories. I might differ with that a bit with regards to global stories. There are stories of heist, there are stories of marital differences. There are certain stories that happen everywhere in the world. So when you make those kind of stories, people want to see how it's relatable in your country. How are those stories told in your country? So while it's also, while it's a global story, it has to be authentic from your side of the story. I'm just saying that there are global stories, actually.
Okay. We'll have him react to that. Unfortunately, we can't take more questions because of time. Let me throw this back to the panelists. I actually thought you were sort of in agreement. Yeah, but yeah. I think the point about global stories was perhaps trying to infuse different cultures into one by force.
That's what a personal story is.
Right.
It's personal. It's authentic to your voice. Right. And when it's personal, it resonates with everybody. So a personal story is a global story, if you will.
Got
right.
It.
So I think we agree. And in terms of YouTube, I think that's just a known fact that it's a great platform that's accessible to anyone. And if you want to monetize it, there's different markets where you can be more efficient than others right now. But just as a whole, generally speaking, the entire content industry is slowly moving to Africa. And it's just because of the numbers.
Okay, I hear we're done. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to connecting further.